Today I want to talk about your ES system config file. The ES system config file is the file that defines all of your systems and all the paths to run the emulators associated with those systems in Emulation Station. The ES system config file is your top level file. It has all the information you need in it to set up, even if you want to add new emulators, build custom things outside of what comes in a default Emulation Station image, you can add it in here. So for instance, if you've seen the comic strip theme, there is options in there for Capcom system. Capcom system isn't a default theme, or I guess a default emulator on its own. But all it is a specific set of ROMs, and in its own folder, in its own directory, so that you can sort it out. Now, some people want to have everything broken out into smaller chunks. Other people want to have just as few different systems as possible. And the cool thing about the ES systems, I'm going to call it ES systems, but the Emulation Station systems config, is that you can define all that. So I'm going to check this out here. Alright, this is the original Emulation Station ES systems config file. It has each of your emulators, the name that they're going to be called, the path to the ROMs, the extension or extensions that you can use for the file, the run command of a script to basically what runs the ROM, and then platform and theme. Okay, this is where we get into some pretty cool stuff. So another note on the ES systems config is the order that you put these in is the order they show up in your Emulation Station menu. So for my build, I have set up a ES systems config that has a couple extra systems, but also reorganized the order they go in. I kind of wanted to group all my Nintendo together, group all my arcade together, group Sega together, so kind of keep some organization to it. And so I restructured and reorganized mine. So I'll start out with all my arcades, all the different options for arcades. And then I got into Capcom, because when TMT and I were putting together the theme, the comic strip theme, we both liked how attract mode lets you break things out. So I wanted to see how we could do that with Emulation Station. So we have options, and so let me drag this over. If you look in, this is the comic book folder that you get when you install it on your system. So the important thing to note is each of these folder names is the name that needs to be in theme over here. So FBA goes to FBA. We'll open FBA up, and here's the background for FBA, right? Final Burn Alpha. So, and the logo for it and everything. So first thing you should do, absolutely positively make a backup of your ES systems config file. After that, save it off the system. Then you can start modifying it. Get Notepad++, make your mods, make your changes, try to drop it in there and see what happens. If Emulation Station crashes, and you'll know because it most likely won't boot into Emulation Station, if you do things like not close one of these headers here, if you don't have a close to it, it will crash, knowing that it's there, or seeing a config file that's not complete. So easy peasy. You take the one that you created out, drop your original back in, you're right back up and running. No big deal. Here in a second, I'll switch over and show you where the file's located, and you do have to modify permissions to have the ability to edit and overwrite this file. So I'll show you that in just a second. Now, the great thing about this is you can customize this as much as possible. If you want to take every single, ROM that you have, now the constraint is they have to use the same emulator or the same script to run, okay? As long as every ROM that you put in this folder runs off of the same script or the same emulator, basically, you can add it. So again, you can break out your ROM sets to be smaller, to be you can do NES sports games, you can do PSX fighting games, you can do really anything. And it's just a matter of coming into this ES Systems config, copying what you want, right? And then making sure that the ROMs that you have are one of these extensions, and that they're compatible with the emulator that it's calling out to use. Now, Comic Strip Theme has a ton in it, and that's a lot of people have mentioned. Hey, there are so many in here, and I don't even know. I don't have half this stuff, which is totally okay. It hurts nothing for them to sit there if you don't particularly have those systems. But the good news is, if the system is here in this folder, if it is listed out, you absolutely can come over here to your ES Systems, set up, or even just copy one that's already here and then tweak it to fit what you'd like to have. Change the name of it. Make sure that your ROMs directory points to the specific folder that you create in the ROMs folder, and then you can go nuts. So, like I said, on mine, I started off adding CPS 1, 2, and 3. It was too many menu options, so I just added a Capcom one. Actually, that was an idea as we were working on the theme. Gosh, I wish I remember who it was. In the forum said, hey, I kind of want a Capcom one. I was like, wow, this is a great idea, because you can actually use the box art. Will tell you which Capcom system it was on, 1, 2, or 3. So it still breaks it out a little bit for you, but that was a great idea, and I'm gonna have to find out who that was and mention it, because that was excellent. So biggest things here. One, this defines the order. So if you always want to start on Nintendo, put Nintendo at the top of the list. Another thing to keep in mind is as you're adding and taking away things, it works in a hierarchy. So system list is the first and last thing. System list close system list is the first and last thing that must be in this file. Anything else in here or if there's anything after that, I don't even think it will boot. It won't work. So like I said, it works in a hierarchy. We'll come down here to Retropie. So I put my Retropie menu at the very last, so that when it boots up, I can just pop to the left, and it'll go to Retropie. So again, a hierarchy. So you list the system. So system, close system, what the name of it is, the full name of it. This is more like a short name. The path, extension, and Retropie. It's a script, so these are scripts that you run. The command, platform. There is no platform. And theme. So theme is for Retropie, which we obviously have a Retropie one set up over here. So if you load up the comic book theme, you don't have a system. You've got ROMs for a system that is not showing up. Most likely the system is not spelled out in your ES systems config folder. So what I'm going to do now is boot up my Pi, and I will show you where the directory is for this file, how to change the permissions to edit the file, and what you need to do. You know, if basically, as long as you make a backup of this file, as long as you keep it on your desktop, even in the same folder, just with a different name, you can't screw this up. You're not going to crash your build by doing this system. You will temporarily brick it to where it won't boot into Emulation Station. You get rid of the modified ES systems config. You put your original back in. Bam, you're right back where you started. So let's switch over. Actually, I'm gonna switch over to the Pi and bring up probably just WinSCP, and that'll help us see what I'm talking about. So I have my Pi booted up, and I've used PuTTY to log into it. So the ES systems config file is in the etc folder in Emulation Station. So you need permissions to overwrite that file. Now, here comes the warning. The big red flag should be hanging out right now. We are going to change the permissions of the Emulation Station folder. With this command, you are giving read-write privileges to anyone who accesses the Emulation Station folder. Do not, by any means, try to do this to the entire etc folder. You run into issues, things go horribly wrong, you will destroy your build, and there is no recovering from it. Ask me how I know. It's because I tried it and I screwed up royally. So do not run a command like this where you chmod anything in the etc folder except for the Emulation Station folder. Changing the Emulation Station folder will not affect your system performance. It will not affect your stability or anything. Now, with that said, you are giving read-write privileges to anyone who decides to get in and look at the Emulation Station folder. So obviously it was set with limited permissions for a reason. So if you don't feel comfortable, you might not want to proceed. At the very least, it's totally worth setting up a vanilla build that you haven't poured hours and hours into, and then mess with this file and see what your results are. Definitely, I've been there. I have made several builds where I did one thing that I thought I was doing right, and I've screwed it all up, had to start over. So hopefully that sinks in. Hopefully you're making periodic backups, and hopefully you're following along, and this is good to go. So right here we are going to change permissions of the Emulation Station folder. Alright, that's a good sign. Looks like we didn't get any bad words spit at us, so we're doing okay. So now, using WinSCP, it's my program of choice. It helps me. You can use it to navigate everything. Tons of videos out there. I'll be honest with you. Most of what I've learned, I've got a Linux background to an extent. I actually have worked more on Unix than Linux. But a lot of what I've learned is watching videos from ETA Prime, videos from Mallow Pixel. Even outside of the Retropie community, there are a ton of Linux videos out there, and check them out. Hooking up WinSCP on the Simply Austin on the Hyperspin side when I was doing Hyperspin builds. There's a great community, a great level of knowledge out there, and learning how to do these things is really going to strengthen you as we move forward into new projects and things get updated and changed. So in any case, here we are. We have got ETC Emulation Station. So if you're at home, right here, ETC Emulation Station. So the absolute first thing I would do is take this and drag it right off of there. Now you have a default copy on your desktop that's not going to be edited. The next thing that I personally do is I change this to ES Systems Backup. All right. Because it is not specifically es_systems.cfg, the system's going to ignore this file until you modify that file and take backup out of there. So now you can come over here and open up this default ES systems file, and you can go in and change as much as you want. What I am going to do, well, I'm not going to make this change right here. I think you see what I'm talking about and how easy it is to make modifications. If you don't, more than happy to throw up a little bit extra step by step. I feel like my last video got too long, so I want to kind of keep this short, just make it hopefully make it informative and help somebody out there. So after you modify this file and you set it the way you want, you'll save it. Again, do all this on your desktop. Don't have to do this on the Pi. You save it, and then when you're ready, you drag it right back in. Now, if we wouldn't have made the changes to the permissions that we did with putty and the sudo command, we would not have been able to rename this file and write to this directory at all. So if you're getting errors trying to write to this directory or changing the name of this file, that's the problem. You need to go in and redo this command, sudo chmod etc emulation station. So one last thing I want to talk about is, when we built this theme, we also built in the ability to have ROM hacks or homebrewed, custom created ROMs, because there's a great community out there of people designing and developing new games for old hardware. It's amazing. If you haven't seen any or taken part or even download and play them, and most people put them out there for free. They let you try them out, play them. They look for your input and feedback. It is a wonderful community of people out there doing custom things for old hardware. It's very exciting, especially since I'm sitting in a room where I have all of this old hardware. So when you go through the list, now, when you're building your ES systems config, only the themes that are in this comic book, if you're using comic book or whichever theme you choose to use, only the themes listed in here are going to be themes available. If what you list in ES systems config, if what you list right here for theme does not exactly 100% match a folder in here, it is not going to point to it, and you're going to see that nice bright white screen that everybody hates. If you see that bright white screen, that's your problem. You've got a mismatch between the theme that the emulator is calling for and the directory name of the theme. So for instance, we've had some requests to add some more files. MSX2 is a big one. That's one that I personally want to try to get into the next release, because I have some MSX2 games I would like to play. And in this theme right now, if you put them in, it looks it's that bright white screen of awful. Now, when there is a way to, I guess, get around that. You could always just copy the MSX folder, name it MSX2, or in your ES systems config, when you spell out MSX2, see, I don't think I have it in this one. When you spell it out, just point it back to the MSX theme. Visually, it will look better. It's not going to be a bright white screen. It'll give you a theme as like a placeholder until the new version comes out. So just a couple things that you can do to try to work around it. But anything that's in here, any folder that you see, directly points to a theme that's been created, and it's something that you can set up in ES systems config and run on your own. So anyways, I hope it helps. If you do have questions, if I breeze over something a little too fast, please hit me up in the comments. Um, like, subscribe. I'd really like to keep doing these short videos and really branch out into other things too. Branch out into actual retro hardware, teardowns, build ups. Tell me what you want to see. Thanks for the few people that have subscribed. Like I love it. I'm glad that the community is receptive. I'm glad that people are enjoying these. So if you like them, let me know. Hey, if you don't, let me know that too. I am new at this, so I get it. I can take some criticism. So in any case, thanks a lot. Like, subscribe, hit me up. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Get at me. All right, man. Have a good one.